Imagine a world where every mistake you make becomes a roadmap instead of a dead end, where failure doesn't humiliate you but teaches you, where avoiding obvious errors gives you a greater advantage than chasing brilliance ever could. What if the secret to better decisions wasn't about finding the cleverest answer, but about recognizing the traps most people fall into, understanding the invisible forces that drive human behavior, and thinking in a way that most minds never do? Today, we are going to explore a way of thinking that flips problems upside down, reveals hidden dangers, and shows why avoiding stupidity, embracing reality, and learning from failure is the fastest path to lasting success. Thinking backward is one of the simplest ideas that most people rarely use, and yet it is one of the most powerful tools for making clear decisions. The human mind naturally wants to move forward, to ask what actions will lead to success, happiness, or achievement. This forward-only approach feels productive, but it often hides blind spots. When people think only about what they want to achieve, they overlook the many obvious ways they could fail. Thinking backward corrects this imbalance by forcing the mind to confront reality before optimism takes over. When you invert a problem, you start by asking a different question. What would guarantee a bad outcome? What behaviors, decisions, or habits would almost certainly lead to failure? This simple shift changes how the brain works. Instead of chasing clever solutions, you begin by removing obvious errors. Avoiding stupidity is far easier than trying to be brilliant, and it produces surprisingly strong results. Most disastrous outcomes are not caused by a lack of intelligence, but by predictable mistakes that were ignored or rationalized away. Backward thinking also protects against overconfidence. People consistently overestimate their own abilities and underestimate risks. By starting with failure scenarios, you force yourself to acknowledge weaknesses, limitations, and external forces you cannot control. This creates humility, which is not weakness but a competitive advantage. A humble thinker is more willing to adjust, learn, and wait, while an overconfident one charges ahead until reality intervenes. Another strength of inversion is clarity. Complex problems often feel overwhelming because there are too many variables to consider at once. Thinking backwards simplifies the process. Instead of trying to optimize everything, you identify a short list of things that must not happen. In business, this could mean avoiding excessive debt, dishonest partners, or incentives that reward bad behavior. In life, it might mean steering clear of destructive habits, toxic relationships, or decisions made in emotional extremes. Once these dangers are removed, the range of acceptable choices becomes much clearer. Thinking backward also aligns closely with how the world actually works. Many systems fail not because people didn't know what to do, but because they ignored what not to do. History is full of examples where success came from patience and restraint rather than action. Investors lose money not because they missed the perfect opportunity, but because they chased excitement, followed crowds, or refused to admit mistakes. By focusing first on what causes loss, backward thinking naturally leads to better long-term outcomes. This approach also trains better judgment over time. Each decision becomes a mental exercise in recognizing patterns of failure. You begin to see recurring themes, incentives that corrupt behavior, short-term rewards that destroy long-term value, and emotional reactions that override logic. As these patterns become familiar, your decision-making becomes faster and calmer, not because you are reacting instinctively, but because you have already ruled out the most dangerous paths. Thinking backward does not mean becoming pessimistic or fearful. It means being realistic. Optimism without discipline is dangerous, but optimism grounded in the avoidance of known errors is powerful. When you remove the major sources of failure, progress often happens naturally. This is why backward thinking works so well across different fields, from personal growth to business strategy to problem solving in everyday life. Perhaps the greatest value of thinking backward is that it encourages independence of thought. Instead of copying what looks successful on the surface, you analyze what caused others to fail. This prevents you from repeating fashionable mistakes and pushes you toward decisions based on reason rather than imitation. In a world full of noise, trends, and confident opinions, the ability to quietly eliminate bad options before choosing good ones is a rare skill, one that steadily compounds over time through fewer regrets, fewer reversals, and a much higher margin of safety built into every important decision you make. Avoiding stupidity before chasing brilliance is an idea that runs counter to how most people are trained to think. From an early age, we are encouraged to be exceptional, to find bold solutions, to stand out through intelligence or creativity. While there is nothing wrong with excellence, this mindset often skips a more practical and far more reliable path to success. Most positive outcomes are not created by flashes of genius but by the steady elimination of obvious errors. When foolish mistakes are removed, average intelligence applied consistently can produce extraordinary results. Stupidity, unlike brilliance, is common and predictable. People repeat the same mistakes across generations. They overreact emotionally, ignore incentives, follow crowds, borrow too much, trust the wrong people, or act without understanding the full consequences of their decisions. These behaviors do not require low intelligence. In fact, smart people are often more vulnerable because they can invent convincing explanations for bad choices. Avoiding stupidity requires discipline, self-awareness, and a willingness to admit uncertainty, qualities that are rarer than raw intellect. One of the reasons avoiding stupidity works so well is that errors carry asymmetric consequences. A single foolish decision can undo years of hard work, while a single brilliant idea rarely guarantees lasting success. In investing, one major loss can erase dozens of small gains. In life, one reckless habit or poor judgment can permanently limit future options. By focusing first on what can go catastrophically wrong, you protect yourself from outcomes that are difficult or impossible to recover from. This approach also reduces the need to constantly be right. When people chase brilliance, they feel pressure to make bold predictions and confident moves. This often leads to unnecessary action and overcommitment. Avoiding stupidity, on the other hand, emphasizes patience and restraint. It accepts that the world is complex and that not acting is often better than acting on incomplete or emotional information. By simply refusing to participate in situations where the odds are clearly unfavorable, you improve your results without needing exceptional insight. Avoiding stupidity also means recognizing human limitations. Everyone is subject to biases, fatigue, social pressure, and self-deception. Instead of assuming you can overcome these weaknesses through willpower alone, this mindset encourages building safeguards. That might mean setting rules in advance, slowing down important decisions, seeking disconfirming evidence, or structuring environments so that bad choices are harder to make. These are not glamorous strategies, but they are highly effective. Another important aspect is understanding incentives. Many foolish behaviors persist because the incentives reward them in the short term. People chase applause, promotions, or quick profits even when the long-term costs are severe. Avoiding stupidity requires looking past immediate rewards and asking who benefits from a decision and why. When incentives are misaligned, even well-intentioned people can behave badly. Recognizing this early helps you stay out of situations where smart outcomes are unlikely. Avoiding stupidity also compounds over time. Each bad decision you avoid preserves capital, reputation, energy, and optionality. This creates a margin of safety that allows you to survive inevitable mistakes and unexpected events. While others are busy recovering from self-inflicted damage, you are still in the game, able to take advantage of opportunities when they arise. Survival, in many fields, is the foundation of success. This way of thinking also encourages a calmer, more rational temperament. Instead of chasing excitement or novelty, you develop a habit of skepticism. You ask simple questions. Does this make sense? What could go wrong? And am I being influenced by emotion or social pressure? Over time, this reduces stress because you are no longer trying to outperform everyone else through constant action. You are simply trying not to do anything disastrously wrong. Ultimately, avoiding stupidity is not about lowering ambition. It is about recognizing that the biggest enemy of progress is not a lack of talent but the presence of preventable errors. When you systematically remove behaviors that predict failure, success becomes less mysterious and less dependent on luck, and more the result of steady, rational decision-making applied consistently over long periods of time. Understanding incentives, biases, and human error is one of the most critical yet overlooked aspects of effective decision-making. People often assume that everyone acts rationally or in good faith, that intelligence alone is enough to make the right choices, or that luck can be relied upon. In reality, human behavior is heavily influenced by forces that operate beneath conscious awareness. Ignoring these forces leads to predictable mistakes, repeated failures, and wasted effort. By learning to recognize incentives, cognitive biases, and the inevitability of human error, you can anticipate problems before they occur and design decisions that minimize their impact. Incentives are everywhere, and they are more powerful than most people realize. People respond to rewards and punishments, often in ways that contradict stated intentions or ethical principles. For example, a manager might genuinely want the best outcome for their company, but if their bonus depends on short-term profits, they are incentivized to take actions that may harm the business in the long run. Similarly, in personal relationships, social or emotional incentives can push people toward decisions that feel good in the moment but create problems later. Recognizing incentives requires stepping back and asking, what does this person truly gain or lose by acting this way? What hidden forces are shaping behavior that is not immediately visible? Failure to analyze incentives often results in repeated mistakes, even among intelligent and well-meaning people. Biases are the mental shortcuts and errors in judgment that all humans carry. These are not flaws in character but inherent features of how the brain processes information. Cognitive biases like confirmation bias, overconfidence, loss aversion, and social proof distort perception and decision-making. For instance, confirmation bias makes people pay more attention to evidence that supports what they already believe, ignoring contrary information that could prevent a mistake. Overconfidence leads individuals to underestimate risks or overestimate their ability to control outcomes. Social proof pushes people to imitate others blindly, even when doing so is clearly unwise. By understanding these biases, you can build defenses against them, such as deliberately seeking opposing viewpoints, questioning first instincts, and analyzing decisions as if you were an impartial observer. Human error is unavoidable. Even the most disciplined and rational person will make mistakes because life is complex, uncertainty is unavoidable, and information is often incomplete. The goal is not to eliminate mistakes entirely, which is impossible, but to design decisions and systems that reduce their likelihood and mitigate their consequences. This is why redundancy, checklists, rules, and risk management exist in high-stakes fields like aviation, medicine, and engineering. Recognizing that humans are fallible allows you to create safeguards and adopt strategies that anticipate predictable errors before they become costly. When you combine an understanding of incentives, biases, and human error, a clearer picture emerges of why people fail and how to avoid failure yourself. Many disasters, in business, investing, or personal life, are not random. They are the result of predictable reactions to incentives, predictable cognitive distortions, and predictable errors in execution. People fail to recognize these patterns, assume they are smarter or luckier than others, and repeat mistakes. By studying human behavior objectively, you can foresee these patterns and act accordingly, avoiding traps that claim others repeatedly. One of the most powerful benefits of understanding these forces is the ability to invert problems. Instead of asking, "How do I succeed?" you can ask, "How do most people fail?" When you examine human incentives and biases, the paths to failure become obvious. Chasing immediate rewards at the expense of long-term outcomes, trusting authority blindly, overestimating your own competence, and ignoring warning signs. Avoiding these behaviors is often enough to achieve above-average results without needing genius-level insight. Success is often a byproduct of systematically avoiding failure, and understanding the underlying human factors is what makes that approach reliable. This approach also encourages a patient and rational mindset. When you realize that human error is inevitable, you stop expecting perfection from yourself and others. You start focusing on processes, not dramatic outcomes, and on systems, not single decisions. This reduces frustration and impulsive behavior, allowing you to act with discipline in situations where emotion and social pressure would normally dominate. Over time, the ability to see beyond immediate incentives, to anticipate biases, and to account for human error compounds into an extraordinary advantage, because most people never pause to think this deeply. In practice, this means constantly analyzing motivations, questioning assumptions, and designing decisions to be resilient against predictable mistakes. It means accepting that errors will happen but refusing to be blindsided by them. It means studying both successes and failures to see which human factors were at play and adjusting your approach accordingly. By embedding this awareness into the way you think, you reduce the chance of making catastrophic errors and increase the likelihood that your actions, over the long term, will lead to reliable and repeatable results. Simplicity, rationality, and long-term thinking are principles that, when applied consistently, transform decision-making from a guessing game into a reliable process. In a world obsessed with complexity, flashy strategies, and immediate results, these three elements are often undervalued. Yet they are the foundation of enduring success because they focus on what truly matters and strip away distractions that lead to errors. Complexity creates confusion and encourages overconfidence, whereas simplicity makes problems manageable, rationality ensures decisions align with reality, and long-term thinking allows time to compound advantages while avoiding short-term pitfalls. Simplicity begins with understanding that most systems and problems can be broken down to their core components. Many people overcomplicate decision-making because they are attracted to sophistication or believe that cleverness is equivalent to effectiveness. Complex strategies are often appealing intellectually, but they introduce more opportunities for mistakes, misinterpretation, and error. By stripping a problem to its essentials, you can identify what actually drives outcomes and ignore irrelevant noise. Simplification does not mean ignoring details entirely. It means focusing energy on the few factors that have the greatest impact. In business, this could mean concentrating on products that generate the majority of revenue rather than spreading resources thin. In personal life, it may involve focusing on habits that yield the largest benefits instead of chasing countless small improvements. Rationality is the tool that allows simplicity to be effective. It requires a clear-eyed assessment of reality, a willingness to see the world as it is rather than as we wish it were, and the discipline to make choices based on facts rather than emotions. People often think they are rational, but emotions, biases, and social pressures distort judgment. Rationality demands that we identify these distortions, question assumptions, and focus on what is objectively verifiable. It also means thinking probabilistically, recognizing that few events are certain and most outcomes exist along a spectrum of likelihood. Rational thinking encourages mental models, frameworks for understanding the world, that help organize information logically and anticipate consequences. Without rationality, even simple ideas can fail, because simplicity alone does not prevent error if assumptions are flawed or decisions are made impulsively. Long-term thinking is what allows simplicity and rationality to compound their benefits. Many people make decisions based on short-term gains, immediate approval, or quick wins, ignoring the cumulative effects of time and compounding. Long-term thinking requires patience, discipline, and the willingness to delay gratification. It also requires an awareness of the consequences that may not be apparent immediately but will emerge over months or years. In investing, this is evident in the advantage of holding quality assets through volatility rather than chasing the latest trend. In personal growth, it manifests as consistent effort over years rather than erratic bursts of enthusiasm. The combination of long-term perspective with rational and simple principles allows small, incremental decisions to accumulate into extraordinary results. These three principles work together because they reinforce each other. Simplicity ensures that focus is placed on what matters most. Rationality ensures that focus is aligned with reality and not distorted by emotion or bias. Long-term thinking ensures that the results of these focused, rational choices are allowed to compound, producing outcomes that often exceed what could be achieved through short-term brilliance or reactive decision-making. This combination reduces wasted effort, avoids catastrophic mistakes, and amplifies the benefits of consistent, well-considered action. Applying simplicity, rationality, and long-term thinking also builds resilience. Complexity often hides vulnerabilities, creating fragile systems that collapse under stress. Impulsive or emotionally driven decisions amplify mistakes when unexpected challenges arise. Short-term thinking encourages risk-taking without sufficient consideration of consequences. By contrast, a simple approach, guided by rational assessment and reinforced by long-term perspective, produces systems and habits that are robust under uncertainty. Mistakes are less catastrophic, errors are easier to spot, and recovery is more manageable because the framework of decision-making is fundamentally sound. Furthermore, these principles create a mental advantage over most people because they are rarely practiced consistently. Many individuals and organizations overcomplicate, overreact, and prioritize immediate gratification. Those who embrace simplicity, apply rational thought, and think long-term often outperform the majority without needing extraordinary talent. The advantage comes from avoiding predictable errors, focusing energy where it matters, and letting time amplify the effects of sound decisions. Over the long run, compounding becomes the ultimate differentiator, but only if it is combined with rational assessment and a focus on the essential variables. Simplicity, rationality, and long-term thinking also shape behavior and character. They encourage patience, discipline, humility, and critical thinking. They require that we resist the temptation to follow the crowd, chase trends, or pursue shortcuts. They teach us to value quality over quantity, substance over style, and consistency over occasional brilliance. By embedding these principles into our decision-making framework, we gradually build a process that is far more predictable, reliable, and effective than strategies based on luck, emotion, or fleeting cleverness. Over time, these habits compound not only results but also judgment, intuition, and resilience, creating a cycle of continuous improvement that is difficult for those who neglect these principles to match. Learning from failure instead of fearing it is one of the most underrated yet powerful approaches to growth and decision-making. Most people instinctively avoid failure, seeing it as a source of shame, loss, or embarrassment. This fear is natural, but it also limits understanding and progress. Failure is often the clearest teacher because it exposes gaps in knowledge, flaws in reasoning, and weaknesses in execution. Those who treat failure as an opportunity rather than a threat can identify patterns, correct errors, and develop strategies that prevent the same mistakes from recurring. By embracing failure as a source of information, you gain an advantage over the majority who avoid mistakes at all costs, often at the expense of real learning. The first step in learning from failure is separating ego from outcomes. People often tie their self-worth to success or perceive mistakes as personal flaws. This mindset makes failure painful and discouraging, preventing objective analysis. When failure is viewed impersonally, as feedback rather than judgment, it becomes much easier to study, understand, and use as a tool for improvement. The key is to ask why something went wrong without rationalizing, blaming, or making excuses. Mistakes are rarely unique or mysterious. They tend to follow predictable patterns. Recognizing these patterns requires honesty and the ability to examine one's own role in the outcome without defensiveness. Understanding the causes of failure also involves looking at both internal and external factors. Internal factors include errors in judgment, lack of preparation, or emotional biases. External factors include uncontrollable events, other people's actions, or market shifts. By analyzing both, you develop a more accurate understanding of what was truly responsible for the outcome. This kind of analysis prevents repeating the same mistake in different circumstances. It also teaches humility, because even careful planning and sound reasoning can be upended by factors beyond your control. Recognizing this balance allows you to adjust your strategies realistically rather than clinging to overly confident assumptions. Another important aspect of learning from failure is the distinction between tolerable mistakes and catastrophic ones. Not all failures carry the same weight, and the lessons they offer differ. Small, low-stakes failures are opportunities for experimentation and improvement. They allow you to refine approaches, test assumptions, and develop resilience. Large or catastrophic failures are more dangerous but often reveal fundamental flaws in thinking, incentives, or structure. Understanding both types helps prioritize learning. It encourages a mindset that is comfortable with small, controlled failures as stepping stones to larger success while simultaneously designing systems that avoid major, irrecoverable errors. Failure also provides a unique perspective on risk. People who fear mistakes often take unnecessary precautions or avoid action altogether, which can prevent growth and innovation. Experiencing failure under controlled circumstances teaches how to measure risk realistically, how to respond when things go wrong, and how to adjust strategies without panic. It builds mental and emotional resilience, allowing decisions to be made with clarity even under uncertainty. Over time, this reduces anxiety around action and increases confidence, because failure is no longer a catastrophic endpoint but a source of practical knowledge. In addition, learning from failure encourages a long-term perspective. Immediate reactions to mistakes are often emotional and short-sighted, leading to overcorrection or impulsive decisions. By stepping back and analyzing failure calmly, you can focus on long-term improvement rather than short-term regret. This mindset aligns closely with rational and patient thinking, where consistency and disciplined analysis outweigh the desire for immediate validation or quick results. Each failure becomes a data point in a larger pattern, contributing to a deeper understanding that can guide future decisions. Learning from failure also builds humility and empathy. Observing and acknowledging mistakes in yourself makes it easier to recognize similar tendencies in others. It encourages thoughtful collaboration and communication because you understand that no one is immune to error. This humility reduces overconfidence, a leading cause of repeated mistakes, and promotes a culture of constructive feedback rather than blame. By creating an environment where mistakes are studied rather than punished, improvement becomes systematic rather than sporadic. Finally, embracing failure reshapes the relationship with innovation and challenge. People who fear failure are hesitant to try new strategies or explore untested paths. Those who learn from failure understand that errors are a natural part of the process, particularly when attempting something ambitious or complex. They are willing to experiment, adjust, and iterate because each setback contributes to knowledge. Over time, this approach compounds advantages, as repeated learning from failures leads to better judgment, stronger systems, and more effective decisions. Failure stops being a deterrent and becomes a tool for continuous improvement, providing insights and experience that cannot be gained through success alone.